Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Good news for freedom-loving patriots throughout Europe, and I would say globally, actually, because we're seeing more protests take place, protesting the COVID lockdowns, and of course, there is rioting and violence breaking out, which, of course, I would not condone on its own, and you could very well have false flag attempts or agitators in there who don't care about the message and instead are just looking to loot. Of course. However, in order for there to be the guise for these agitators to try and loot, there has to be enough groundwell support for something which is actually objectively being cracked down on by the state authorities. And because there is then sufficient support for groups that are not supported by any mainstream narrative at all, which is how it differs from Black Lives Matter Marxist protests, for example, because they're being propped up, whereas COVID protesters are not. That if people are willing to take that risk and be fined, or worse, imprisoned for just trying to retain the few freedoms that we're left, then that is going to encourage more people to speak out. And of course, that is why the censoring and the crackdowns have to be incredibly swift and harsh. Because if the powers that be let this get out of control, then there is no putting a lid back on the can. Which is, of course, why they have to stop this, nip it in the bud, sooner rather than later. But the good news for us is that that's not working. And we can already see that they're getting a bit concerned about what will actually happen if they try and push their authority to where it is not welcome. As we read here, a Dutch mayor warns the country is heading for civil war following violent anti-curfew protests, as France and Italy admit they're facing another COVID-19 lockdown. And, of course, bear in mind that when you think that vaccines are supposed to be the end-all be-all of all of this, well, you've got the EU vaccine regulator who's saying they will reject the Oxford jab for over 65s. As the German reports say, AstraZeneca, it's only effective 8% of the time for over 65s, which, of course, AstraZeneca furiously denies, but we're seeing that split. And it's funny now that you can't get an agreement on the science when it's something that, it's to do with people's lives, so you can't get political about it, and you've just got to go with what the science says. And yet, of course, they're not. Almost as if scientists disagree, and science actually has to be used and tested in order to find out what the result is, and you're going to have disagreements the whole way along. But of course, if any of us say that, it's not acceptable. So it's nice to see them kind of lose their shit about that. Because what does that mean? It means lockdowns extended, whether that be in the UK until July, or for just 4 weeks, as Italy is suggesting, that what they're doing at the moment has flattened the curve, but they need to drop the curve, in which case they need a national lockdown for a month or so. And how well is that going down? Well, not at all well. Even in the Netherlands, for example, where the latest election was 2017, but there is another one due in March, that we can see Geert Wilders, with the Party for Freedom, won 13.06% of the vote, that those people from an 82% turnout do not support lockdowns, or at least Geert Wilders does not. So you see that there is a definite groundswell given that Party for Freedom, or the Freedom Party, is the second most popular party in the Netherlands. So of course when the Prime Minister comes out and says, 99% of the people agree with the lockdowns, so, well, no they don't. And you can just look at the 2017 election for that. And you've got another one coming up in March. How do you think that's going to go? And of course, Geert Wilders who's saying, no, we should not be having a curfew. The last time this happened was during a particular socialist occupation, and we do not wish for that to happen again. Government seems to be getting a little bit carried away with a little bit too much power. And of course, he's aware of things like lockdowns and stay-at-home orders because of the significant number of death threats he's received for, I suppose, attempting to reenact Enoch Powell over there. And that doesn't go down very well, because, funnily enough, if you point out true facts, then ideology is murderous towards infidels, you're then painting yourself as one of their infidels. And you're correct, they're murderous. And how are they going to prove that? By trying to murder you. But getting back to the topic in hand of COVID. So, Europe is in the midst of COVID chaos as countries race to tighten their restrictions amid high case numbers, given that Europe does this their highest case rate in the world as a continent. Depending on how you define continents, of course. There's no clear-cut definition. And it's got the highest death rate as well of any continent. Officially. But, you know, I don't think China is really reflecting its numbers accurately. But of course, concurrently, then, as I said before, with the World Health Organization saying, oh yeah, so our flu deaths this year, we've got none. None whatsoever, and their influenza division is dumbfounded as to how this statistical impossibility could have happened. I mean, 0 influenza deaths? That must be impossible. How on earth could that happen? Yeah, funny that. Would you like to hazard a guess? And they say, oh, well, it's because of the lockdowns that stopped the other virus from spreading. It's like, really? Really? So you're saying COVID is so phenomenally infectious that we're seeing rates go up during a lockdown, whereas a regular influenza, there were 0 deaths whatsoever. Really, when hospitals are apparently overwhelmed with treating COVID patients as well, there were 0 influenza deaths. Or could it be that maybe COVID isn't as transmissible as they might wish you to think? Because if that was the case, of course, then everybody would have had it before the first lockdown came in. And they're saying that isn't the case, and you can't have it both ways. In which case, maybe some deaths are being misreported. I know, it's shocking, isn't it? Wow, but they'd never do that. They'd never lie to us to push their own agenda. Surely not. I mean, surely it's unthinkable that if you could lump in a load of different illnesses and give it one name in order to then try and get it to be a leading cause of death, and saying that that is one that they can actually stop if you just trust and believe in the plan, they wouldn't do that. Surely not. And how are people taking to that? Well, not very well. Really not. As France is due to decide on a third national lockdown this week, and Italy's top medic has also called for a month-long shutdown. Meanwhile, the continent's vaccine program is in disarray, with France's Pasteur Institute admitting today that its vaccine doesn't work, and AstraZeneca cutting supplies of its jab due to EU supply chain issues. They're blaming a factory in Brussels, but Italy wants to sue them. So, well, okay. Let's say you do sue them. Have you got any other options? So you're basically going to try and get them to go out of business. And obviously, you're not politicising human life, definitely not. So where else are you going to get the vaccines, which you say are all important? Oh, you're not. You're just going to go for more lockdowns. Oh, that was the point all along. Got it. And what, the idea of suing them is to try and make up your deficit? Sorry, but one company isn't going to cover that. It really isn't. Disorder was also growing following riots in the Netherlands, with Mayor warning we're on the path to civil war. Yeah, do you not think we are already? I know Tim Pool likes to mention this as well, that civil wars can last for a couple of decades, in fact. And so, years are just skipped over, and then you're trying to trace back as to when precisely the civil war started, and it can be difficult. So if you're in it, you don't necessarily realise that you're actually in it. But what happened in the Netherlands? Well, it happened all around, essentially, but focused in places more like Amsterdam and The Hague, of course. And this is because of their curfews, which is the first time since it was occupied by the Nazis. So the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte warned rioters will be treated like criminals. Okay, well, fair enough if you're destroying businesses as well. I mean, surely you're just doing what you're saying that they're doing. They are economically destroying businesses. You are physically destroying businesses, which will then lead economic concerns in trying to repair them. Again, it depends which businesses you're going after, but nonetheless, it's not really helping the employees who work there. And he also insists 99% of the country supports curfew, and they don't. As I say, Geert Wilders is against it, and he's got 13% of the population as of 2017, but I don't think that's gone down. So the EU recommend cutting off all but essential travel to dozens of regions, deemed to be among the continent's hotbeds of infection, including locations in Italy, Germany, France and Spain. Yeah, funny that, isn't it? That you've got a centralised power, and then saying, yeah, we don't really like these areas, the dissident areas. Sorry, no, the infected areas. Yes, with the disease. The disease of love for liberty. COVID. Yep. So, no, you're going to be stuck there. Nobody's allowed to see you and you're not allowed out. Brilliant. You can trust us because we're a centralised authority and not elected or accountable to anyone. So we definitely know what we're saying. Perfect. Use that as your tagline. Italy and the European Union have suggested they could sue AstraZeneca for breach of contract after the company announced it could not meet its vaccine quota. I say they're blaming Belgium. Madrid announced its own curfew as Spain's case numbers continue to soar, with Valencia banning groups of more than 2 from meeting outside. And don't you be buying a coffee, otherwise it's a picnic. Spain's Health Minister Salvador Illa stepped down amidst the pandemic to run in local elections in his home region of Catalonia. Fair enough. I mean, I suppose that's all you really can do. If you're going to be blamed from both sides, one side of saying, people are dying and it's your fault, you're the health minister, and others saying, well, we can't afford to survive and it's your fault because you're the health minister. Then, yeah, it's a no-win situation. Don't really blame somebody for stepping down in that situation. And I think it'll be better if a lot of those people step down. You don't need anyone to take their place. You can just leave those positions vacant. That would be fantastic. So, sorry, Netherlands, right, yes. Prompted protests in 10 cities on Sunday, which turned violent as protesters fought police, looted shops and trashed police stations. And so what you'd expect from a riot, not really helping push the message that violent protests turn the public against you. Sorry to say, it might feel good in the moment, but it is not helping the cause. Authorities in Eindhoven announced on Monday that 62 people had been arrested and more were being sought, while officers in Amsterdam said 192 were arrested. Mark Rutte said, "It is unacceptable. This has nothing to do with protesting. This is criminal violence and that's how we'll treat it." Are you separating them out? In which case, yes, fair enough. No, you're not. Okay, right. Eindhoven mayor saying we're on our way to civil war if we continue down this path. Right. Hubert Bruls, mayor of the city of Nijmegen, on the other side of the country, and leader of a group of local security organisations, added, "These demonstrations are being hijacked by people who only want one thing, and that is to riot." Oh, maybe you got a point there. You're actually differentiating between the two. Because, as I say, either the people who are rioting are very misinformed as to how that is going to be perceived by the public, or they are being hijacked, which I think is most likely and is often the case. Really often is. People who are trying to push a political message for populism, or trying to get most support through a democratic way, which, yes, I know, it's just mob rule, but nonetheless, it seems to be the least bad of the other alternatives, that they are not going to get their support that way. Sorry to say, it's just not going to happen. That is what's going to turn most people off, because they do not wish to associate with somebody that is being violent. By all means, we understand the passion, and sometimes violence is necessary. Self-defense is there for that reason. And if police are coming to take you away and they're violating your freedom, then of course you're going to defend yourself against the police. Yes, of course. However, it gets very, very difficult to prove, and it isn't worth jumping to these conclusions of going out and attacking police stations, for example. That is then where it's too difficult to prove, and you can't really do that with a media that is dominated by left-wing narratives. So, unfortunately, we must restrain ourselves from that desire if we wish to turn more people to the cause of which we're fighting. And so it, sure, can be done with protesting, but must be done peacefully. If the police wish to remove your freedom and you wish to defend yourselves, that is another discussion. But again, bear in mind the framing. And I know it is unfortunate, and I know you want to be heard, and they do not want to listen to you. They wish to mock you. But use their mocking against them. Ridicule is a very strong weapon. It really is. But if you're not doing anything wrong, and what you're doing actually has quite a bit of support, and somebody tries to ridicule you, then the response will not be, haha, laugh at that guy, isn't he silly? It will be, hang on, why are you mocking him? What is there to mock? He actually seems to have some pretty sensible ideas. Yeah, actually, I'm intrigued now. I want to know more about that chap. They seem alright. And I know that it's becoming the case more and more as a kind of boy who cried wolf situation. That, you know, these days, if you hear somebody being announced as racist or xenophobic or misogynistic or a Nazi or any of that, then you're probably not thinking, oh, evil person alert, I don't wish to know them. And you instead think, they're probably quite interesting, actually. I don't think they're worthy of those labels. In fact, they're probably just spouting red pills. And then you'll find them and see that you're probably correct and enjoy what they have to say. Because they're not, you know, buzzword, bad buzzword. However, when it comes to actions and seeing people commit violence, that crossing the Rubicon, if you will, that seems to take it over the threshold of what is acceptable, and that is where you will lose your support. So, I know actions speak louder than words, but choose your actions carefully. After all, remember memes. A picture paints 1,000 words. So maybe use more of them. Short, sharp, and to the point. Unlike my meandering videos. With that in mind, that's it for me. So as always, let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think the tide is turning, and that the harder now that the authorities try to push things, the more pushback they are going to get? Because it has been a year, and I know that Biden has been sworn in the States with his asterisk presidency. But already people are turning against him for, of course, the mask mandate in federal buildings, for $15 minimum wage for federal workers, for stopping the Keystone XL pipeline, which is pissing off Canadians as well, which means he's going to have to go with the Ukrainian gas company. Wonder if Burisma's got anything to do with that. The unions being pissed off at him in terms of construction jobs being lost, which is saying, well, yeah, they're only temporary construction jobs. Well, yeah, because it's once something is built, they stop working on it. But there are always more things to be built or maintained. Did you think of that? Yeah. Either way, let me know down below. And we're not going to stop. And as always, until next time, have a good one.